Okay, well, hey guys, welcome to a new video. Today we're talking about how should a chess beginner improve. I'm going to give you some tips and some ideas about how to get better if you're a beginner. And in the video, we are going to talk about we're going to have like 4 sections. I'm going to talk about well, this is sunny here, right? Uh, yeah. I'm going to talk about 4 sections here, like the opening, give you tips and ideas about opening and how much you should know, you should learn, and you should worry about in the opening. I'm going to talk about Middlegame in another section. I'm going to talk about Endgames. And finally, in the 4th section of the video, I'm going to mention training techniques, training things, right? Like what should a beginner do to get better when we talk about training, right? What should a beginner do if they want to improve and if they want to get better, if they want to make progress, which are good things for beginners. So that's what the video is about. I'm just going to give you ideas, tips. We have the board here, so I can use it and I can tell you things if we need. So let's see. Okay, first of all, about the opening. If you're a beginner, probably you're going to feel a little lost in the opening at first. So let me tell you what you need to do. You need to stick to the principles. That's it. Probably that's something you already knew, but let me tell you a little bit more about this. You don't need to worry about opening theory. You don't need to worry about learning things by heart. You don't need to worry about learning or memorizing 10 moves ahead in any line. I mean, that being said, if you are you feel comfortable learning things and it's very easy for you, you can learn 10 moves, right? This is not going to hurt. For example, this is Italian, right? E45, knight here, and then bishop c4. This is Italian, and when they play bishop c5 is you go piano. But if you're good learning things, you can learn that you can play c3, and then you can learn that you can play d4, and then that you can trade here, and then you can play knight e4 here. I mean knight c3. Um, and well, the line continues. I'm not going to keep going after that, but basically what I'm saying is that you can learn things like this, and it's not going to hurt. Okay, it's not going to hurt. So if it is easy for you, you can do it. But the thing is that you don't need it, right? What you really need is principles. What are principles? Well, principles are control the center, develop minor pieces, and castle. There's a very common problem that I see all the time, and it is like beginners think they are already sticking to the principles, but when we analyze the games, they are not, right? So they think they are actually applying the principles in the games, but they are not really. Um, this is the center of the board. These are the minor pieces, knights and bishops, and castling. Of course, once we develop pieces, we can castle probably kingside, sometimes queenside, I guess. But the thing is that very often they think they are sticking to the principles, but they are not. When you analyze the games, there are mistakes. So this is something we are going to talk about in the last section of the video when we talk about training techniques and we talk a little about analyzing the game with engines. Focus a little on the opening and see, because there are things you're doing wrong and you don't know it. Of course, if you can hire a coach or get some help, it's going to help a lot. If you can get some help, it's going to help a lot. Because they are going to tell you, right? They are going to tell you, here you're not applying the principle, right? This is wrong. It's going to be very easy to spot the wrong things with someone with experience. So that's the thing. Stick to the principles. Do not bring the queen out too early. Don't move pieces twice in the opening. Don't play too many pawn moves. Um, bishops in general should be the knights should in general be developed first or before than bishops. So all those things that I guess you have already heard about. But again, it's not the same to know the principle as to apply the principle. Sometimes we know the principle and we are not really applying the principle in the game. So that's essential, and that's basically what you need. You need principles if you're a beginner. If you're under 1000, under 1200, that's all you need. Apply principles in your games. If you want to learn things, it's good, but you don't need it. You don't need to memorize things. So that's basically everything I wanted to say about the opening. Stick to the principles. You don't need to memorize things. Make sure you're actually using principles because sometimes you think you know it, but you're not really applying it. So that's about openings. Then we go to mid game, and in the mid game, it's complicated because in the opening, it's already very clearly stated what you need to do, right? In the opening, you need to develop pieces, castle, control design, and those things. But then the mid game is not so clear, right? What do you do in the mid game? Where does it say the things you need to do in the mid game, right? What do you do in the mid game? Just fight, right? And try to get some advantage, right? So that's why very often students tell me things like, "I'm very good in the opening, everything is fine, all good, but once I get into the mid game, I don't know what to do." So that's why I'm going to talk a little about it. So once you get into the mid game, you feel more confident and you have a better idea about the things you need to do. So I just created a random mid game position here, so I can give you some tips about that. But basically, what you're going to do in the mid game, first of all, almost always you're going to move your queen out of d1 so you can connect the rooks. So very often the queen is going to be on d2. Sometimes you can bring it to to the king side like g3 or something. But very often this is a maneuver you're going to do in the mid game. Move your queen to connect your rooks. The queen is better and the rooks are better. Because in the opening you have been working with your minor pieces. But once you get into the mid game, you're going to work with your major pieces, like queens and rooks. So that's very important for the mid game, but again, that's just one or two moves. So I guess that doesn't help that much. Like you move the queen, you move the rooks maybe to half open or open files, or to files where you have central pawns, for example, like these ones maybe or something. In this position, there is a half open file here, so your rook is super well on F, and that's the idea, right? Move your rooks to half open files, or behind your central pawns, for example. So that's what I was saying, but that takes like three moves, maybe. So what do we do then, for example? Well, there's a rule that I wanted to talk about and I wanted to share, and it is like improve your pieces, right? So if you don't know what to do, that's totally okay. Sometimes there's just nothing we need to do. Sometimes there's not much we can do or we are supposed to do. That happens a lot in chess, in the middle game. So if you don't know what to do in the middle game, just improve your pieces. That's it. Maybe your knight is on c3, you can go to the center. Maybe your bishop is a little trapped by your pawns, you can play a3. Maybe your queen is on e1 and you can put it on g3. Or maybe your rook is on d1 but then you see it's better on e1. Or maybe your king is too exposed and you can just put it on h1 where it's actually better. So there are a lot of things you can do to get better in the position. Maybe your knight on f3 is better on f5. And you can play knight h4. So basically that's the rule for the middle game. If you don't know what to do, just improve your pieces. I think that's going to help a lot. And also, this rule is very similar. It's basically the same thing, but a little different. It can, at some point, be helpful. And it is improve your worst piece. Okay? So, you don't know what to do. Find your worst piece. Find that piece that is doing nothing, that can get much better, and improve it. Okay? This rule is actually very important because it can help you during many positions. Many positions, not only in the middle game. I mean, at the end of the opening, at the beginning of the end game, this rule is very helpful. Find your worst piece and improve it. Okay, so summing up about middle game, improve your major pieces, right? Because you did not move those pieces in the opening. The middle game is the moment for those. Uh, Improve your pieces in general, right? Your knight, your bishop, your king, your structure, anything you can do to improve. That's something you can do. If you don't know what to do, if there is no clear plan to attack the enemy king or to get any advantage, that's totally okay, it can happen. Just improve your pieces a little, step by step. And finally, keep in mind the third rule I mentioned, like improve your worst piece. Find your worst piece, the one that is in the worst position, and make it a little better. Improve your worst piece. Don't forget it because you can use it not only in the middle game. So that's opening and middle game. And then I need to give you some tips for the end game. So about the endgame, the endgame, the endgame, I know it's complicated, right? Because for some things, first of all, many players don't like it. They just hate to study endgames. That happens. Secondly, they don't really happen that much because if you are a beginner, most of your games are going to be decided either in the opening or most of them in the middle game. So I believe Capablanca mentioned sometime you should start learning chess by studying the endgame and then uh, the other things after that. Of course, we respect Capablanca too much. We love Capablanca in this channel. It's one of my greatest uh, chess idols, we should say. But according to my experience, I can say that endgames are really important, but not really that essential at the beginning. So I could say do not worry that much about endgames by now. Make sure you know, for example, like basic mates. I don't know, king and queen versus king, things like that. Of course, you're going to need that, or king and two rooks versus king. Of course, you're going to need that too, and eventually king and rook versus king. So make sure you know those things. I think that's included in endgames. So make sure you need to know. Make sure you know how to win whenever something like that happens in your games. If you're a beginner, but other than that, I could say learn endgames as they start happening in your games. You can start learning some endgames. We can use the same rule as with the opening. Like, if you really like it, if you really enjoy it, it's not going to hurt to learn some endgame. I mean, if you're passionate about endgame, you can learn king and pawn versus king. This is going to be very good. It's going to help you for sure. At some point, you can learn king and queen versus king and pawn, for example, a pawn that is about to promote. Again, it's going to be good. It's going to be useful. You can learn king and pawn and bishop versus king and understand that this endgame is a draw when there is a rook pawn and it's promoting in opposite colored square. So yeah, there are a lot of things we can learn and they are basic and not too hard to learn. Also, we can learn Lucina and Philidor, for example, how to defend. This is a Philidor defense here, how to defend in a rook pawn, a rook endgame with a pawn down. Or we can talk about Lucina's bridge, how to win an endgame like this one. So yeah, there are many things we can learn in general. But again, if you're a total beginner, you're just learning things, I wouldn't worry about this at the beginning that much because they're not going to happen. Most games will end before the end game. So I would say include endgames uh, slowly, right? As they happen in your games, as you're more curious, as you feel you need it, as your coach helps you and suggests you to work with it, then work with endgames. But no, do not worry. I would say it's the phase of the game that we need to study the least when you are a total beginner. Again, king and queen, king and two rooks, and king and rook. If you consider that endgame, which I think they are endgame, that's very important, right? Those things are you're going to need those. But other than that, go slowly and uh, study them as you need it, as you feel stronger, as you feel more stable in your game, and you can go through opening mid game and get there. Okay, then you're going to need some endgame at some point, and it's going to be very helpful. So that's about endgames. And finally, we need to talk a little about training techniques. So some tips and some things you can do to get better in chess, like some training tips. Well, about training, I'm going to talk about three things. Thing number one, and it's the most important, you need to play many games, as many games as you can and you want. They are going to be good. They are never going to hurt. They are going to be always helpful. This is underestimated in the chess world, in the online chess world. I can tell you that many players don't uh, understand how valuable this is, right? They are trying to watch some video, some series, read some book, I don't know, and they are playing one game per day or two games per day. So if you really want to get better, you need to uh, play many games. Only by playing games you can get better at chess. That's something you need to be aware of. So if you feel passionate about it, if you like it, don't be afraid, don't hesitate to play chess games. It's going to help you always. As many games as you want, as many games as you can. What time control? Well, in general, for example, bullet and those things are not going to help that much. But I could say after 5 minutes, right? 5 minutes or more, 5, 10 minutes, 15, 10. All those time controls are going to be amazingly good. So they are perfect. So you can play either of those. Pick your favorite and play games with that time control. But again, they are always going to help. 80%. If you're a total beginner, even intermediate player, 80% of the time you invest in chess, according to my humble opinion, should be playing games. Exactly. So that's one thing. Thing number two is solve puzzles. Regular rated puzzles we have on chess.com, on Lichess, any chess platform. They are there. So work with puzzles. And the thing is that you're going to need this, and no matter whether you are a beginner, intermediate, advanced, master, tournament, elite, no matter what your level is, you're going to need those. So work with puzzles always, right? You're going to need it for sure. Trying to escape from the sun, but not so easy. So yeah, work with many puzzles always. And the third thing I wanted to say is a little tricky, but if you can do it, it's going to help. And it is work with your own games. So once you play the game, you can look at your mistakes and you can learn from those. Like you did something wrong, the engine is going to tell you in the review what move was better, and then you can learn from that moment. So if you're curious about your mistakes, if you're thinking, how did I lose this game? What did I do wrong in this game? That's great. Okay, use that feeling, use that question, use that curiosity to get better. So work with the review of the game, find the moment where you did things wrong, and improve it. Exactly. It's going to help a lot. But this is not so easy because I understand that some players are not familiar with the process of analyzing a game, finding the mistakes and those things. So I understand it's not so easy. But well, if you are actually able to do that, it can be very helpful. And one more thing about the openings and the analysis. I was saying at the beginning that you can use the review of the game and focus especially on the opening, because the opening is something that is going to happen again in your next games. So pick the opening. For example, if you did something wrong in the opening, like e45, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4, bishop c5. Okay, look at this line. Knight f6. Wait. A knight here. Fried liver attack, right? Pawn takes b5. Okay. So you did something wrong. You see this line for the first time. You don't know how to deal with it, right? And I guess you capture. That's not a good move. The best move in this position is bishop f1. It's crazy, right? There's no way you can know this if you have not studied that. So the thing is, if you review the game, you notice that bishop b5 was bad and you played it, and that bishop f1 is better. You're able to understand why it's better. Well, use that knowledge for future games, right? So what I'm saying is that whatever you learn in the opening is going to be useful in future games because they are going to play the line. Your opponents will play it again. So it's going to help you again for sure. Not necessarily that it's going to happen in the mid again that much or in the end game that much. Those are totally different positions. Of course, it's instructive because sometimes we have patterns and things that happen, but in the opening it happens much more, right? It's exactly the same line again. So I could say review games and focus on the openings. Those mistakes are more important than other mistakes, right? Like the mistakes in the opening are very important. The mistakes in the middle game also important, but maybe not that much. And also the mistakes in the end game important, but even less, I could say, because also in the end game you're under time pressure and those things. So those are normal mistakes, I could say. But opening very important, and middle game mistakes also important. That's the way I see it. So I don't know if you guys have any questions or something. You can of course write the questions in the comments below. As you can see, it has been a very sunny video, so I hope to get a like at least. So feel free to subscribe, and I catch you guys later in another video.